So if we can let go of that expectation for our bodies and treat our bodies gently when changes happen, just like we would a kid,
Yeah.
then I think that could be helpful going through those phases.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it comes down to that we don't need more control. We need more trust.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I
And
love that.
and when you trust yourself and you trust your body, then you are able to make decisions out of autonomy and out of, oh, okay, well, I wonder what my body is communicating to me, and that no matter what size my body gets, it deserves to be fed, clothed, treated with respect, human decency, get
Yeah,
quality medical care. That's the heart of health at every size and body
absolutely.
liberation. Welcome to the Body Grievers Club. Hi, friend. I am your host, Bree Campos from Body Image with Bree. I am a fat positive body image coach, educator, and trained mental health counselor. My goal is to help you stop hating your body and learn how to move through unavoidable body grief. This won't be your average body image advice. No affirmations, no fluff, no filter. I am prepared to say the quiet parts out loud. And no matter how overwhelming or hopeless your body image feels, you belong here. Welcome to the Body Grievers Club. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Body Grievers Club. Today's guest is my friend, my colleague, and former client and body griever, Dacy Gillespie, who is the pioneer of the blog Unflattering. And I'm going to let her introduce herself. So, Dacy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I know I mentioned this before we started recording, but I am truly a little nervous and honored to be here because I love you and your work so much and I look up to you so much. So thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Dacy. I am an anti-diet and weight inclusive personal stylist. And so what that means is that I help clients kind of discover what their style is outside of the parameters that society has put on them because of the size or shape of their body. So we kind of, root all that out, ignore it, and then go about figuring out what it is that you really want to wear.
Yeah. Tell me, how did you get into this work?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because it's a little bit of a different path. A lot of
Yeah.
people kind of in our little niche are people who had personal experience and then, kind of wanted to help others kind
Yeah.
of get through the same challenges that they had. And for me, I have always benefited from thin privilege. I still do, even though my body's, changed quite a bit over the years. But what happened was that I always loved style and clothes, and I know you always have as well. And so after I burned out at like my third career, I was like, okay, I'm finally going to give this a go. And my styling business kind of took off, and almost immediately, like within the first like 4 or 5 clients I had,
Mm.
I was hit with this huge realization that like I could not help people clean out their closet. I could not help them go shopping if we didn't talk about how they felt about their bodies.
Wow.
Like it was just so obvious to me that we couldn't skip that piece.
Mm.
And it was also obvious to me that every single woman I worked with had these issues. I mean,
Yeah.
it was mind blowing. And so basically, I kind of started out my business, it's called Mindful Closet. It started out as a little bit more of a focus on minimalism, trying to just kind of reduce the amount of shopping that we do, trying to, hone in on what you love so that you'll shop less, essentially. And so, but again, that, I had this realization early on. And so at that point, I started just educating myself. I started reading all the books and looking at the, finding all the people to learn from who were in larger bodies and, just went from there and kind of started passing that knowledge on to my clients. And, of course, I've never been in the position of working with people in a different way, but so all I know is the way that I work with people, but it makes massive shifts for people when they think of it this way.
I think, one of the unconscious body griefs that I think people don't realize around clothing is the fear of inaccessibility. You know, as somebody who's in a large fat body, I wear on the higher ends of plus sizes. Accessibility to clothing sizes is not always available. And I actually just recently made a post, and I'll link it in the show notes, where the post I titled it was I forgot the privileges of being a 3X because I was
Yes,
able
that
to.
was such a good post.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Because it was such a recognition for me of my own growth, because there would have been a time being able to fit back into a smaller size would have been like a, oh, thank God. And
Hmm.
the only thing it did was piss me off, because
Hmm.
I shouldn't only feel included when I'm in a smaller size. And it's a
Yeah,
privilege that I had forgotten about. And so, yeah, so I think when people are trying to figure out their style and they're trying to figure out their relationship to their body around clothes, there can be so much untapped grief. Um,
absolutely. Yeah. And I just made a post a couple of days ago that did pretty well, which was about the British brand Lucy and Yak discontinuing their largest size. So size
yes.
32, 4X. And I was furious. Like I was, and I talked in that post about how, I mean, I'm a working stylist, so I have like a spreadsheet of go-to brands that I just kind of keep for myself. It's also a perk for certain membership levels on my Substack.
Nice.
But, it's a running, living document. Like I'm always adding brands to it, I'm always updating it. And unfortunately, one of the updates I have to make often is that this brand has gone out of business, and they're, usually they're more size inclusive brands. And so in that spreadsheet, I think it's something like 263 brands that I have on there. Now, when you select only brands that go up to 3X, that number drops by at least half, right? And that's even disproportionate because I make much more effort to find brands that go up to 3X. Like there's a million straight size brands I could add. I could have 10,000 names on this,
Sure.
spreadsheet. And then when we select only sizes 4X and up, the numbers drop to, like a tenth of what the total is.
Yeah.
And then, and I said in that post, like, I have QVC on that freaking list just because, like, that's one of the few options,
Yep.
right? And so, we don't have to go too much into it here because I know you've had this conversation before, but this brand, which is this Lucy and Yak brand, is a specifically like bright, colorful, poppy brand. If that's your style and you just lost the ability to buy that brand, like that's a huge blow. And I don't think they understand the backlash and the bad publicity they're going to get from that is going to outweigh any sort of business savings, which that's all bullshit anyway. But
Correct. Correct. And I mean, something that I so appreciate about, when you talk about clothing and accessibility and even the idea of like the shopping less, minimalism,
mhm.
is you talk about the intersections of white supremacy, racism, the patriarchy, capitalism. So tell us how that intersects
Yeah,
in your
yeah,
world. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Well, I think if we kind of just like collectively think of general traditional style advice, the goal is always to have something be flattering, right? Like that's just
Mm,
kind of what we're going for. And spoiler alert, my newsletter is called Unflattering. So obviously, I have some issues with that. But when we think about that and what makes things more flattering, it is things that try to create optical illusions to make you appear smaller than you are when really nobody's disappearing. You know what I mean? Like we're not making optical illusions that somehow take away part of your body. Like it's just and a lot of stylists, and I've had this conversation with a lot of other stylists, and they will talk about, well, my client just wants to look good. She wants to feel good. And what I think I do differently is that I'm going to ask, where did the idea that that looks good come from? Right? Because, we can trace it all the way back hundreds of years in Europe when Africans started being brought to Europe as slaves. And that when the whole, white supremacists wanted to make this distinction, this very clear distinction between white bodies and black bodies.
yep.
Right. And so they demonized larger bodies. I'm oversimplifying it so much, but Sabrina Strings, of course, wrote the book on it.
Absolutely.
So when we think, and then another one, I feel like I saw you mention this recently too, another way we can look at this is that there's a ladder of bodily hierarchy, right? Coined by Sonya Renee Taylor. So at the very top of this ladder is the white ideal standard of beauty, right? Thin, blonde hair, pale skin, just whatever we think of typically as what's the most beautiful. And if you're further down on the ladder, if you're not thin, if you have curly hair, if you are not white, society has pressured us to conform to whiteness as much as possible, because then we can get closer to that ideal standard, right? So clothing, and we think about that a lot in terms of beauty, right? And are we chemically treating our hair, or are we, yeah, I mean, there's cultures around the world that try to lighten their skin, I mean, there's just so many things. But it really applies with clothing as well, because if we are trying to find clothes that are the most, quote, flattering for us, that is society's pressure on us to try and get closer to that ideal.
Correct. And I'll just reference the books that you mentioned: Sabrina Strings, Fearing the Black Body, Sonya Renee Taylor's The Body Is Not an Apology, and Deshaun Harrison's
Mm-hmm.
book, The Belly of the Beast. All really great, references. Oh, what I was going to mention was I have a podcast episode with Lindley Ashline,
Love
and
her.
we talk about picture grief and
Mm-hmm.
how like you deserve to be part of the memories even in your largest body.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
one of the things that we talk about in the episode is similar to what you were saying about like the proximity to whiteness, the proximity to, adhering to the beauty standards. And then, I know when I was on this liberation, excavation, I was like, am I not allowed to like shave anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
where's the line? And one of the things that Lindley says in that episode is like, it's kind of like we live in a capitalistic culture. It's hard not to subscribe to capitalism, but it's just naming when you are. It's
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
like
no,
jump
it's
in.
the ADHD excitement. I get
Yeah.
it. Right. So if just like I'm gonna subscribe to the beauty standard today. I'm subscribing to the cultural standards of beauty. Does it cause you distress to not engage in those behaviors? And if it doesn't, therapeutically, I'd want to explore why that is. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, well, I don't remember what I was going to say then, but now I'm on to something else. Yes. Um, so yes, and I think a major piece too that we can't forget is that yes, we do exist in this world. We've been conditioned for 30, 40, 50 years plus, and also we need to feel safe,
Yeah.
right? And so what
Yes.
I think, I'm always glad when I have the opportunity to clarify this, because I am not saying wear whatever you want. I'm not saying like disregard, every fashion rule you've ever been taught, because there are people in our society who will actually face harm if
Mhm.
they don't conform in some ways, right? And I'm thinking about trans people, I'm thinking about gender nonconforming people, and even, people of color who will get,
Yep.
and people in larger bodies, who will sometimes physically, but often just will be discriminated against. They might lose income, they might lose, authority. And so it's
Absolutely.
a tricky game to play.
And this is right, the proximity to power and privilege of, yes, I might not get a job because of the body size that I'm in, but I will never lose a job because of how I choose to wear my hair. Whereas somebody
Right,
who's fat
exactly.
and black might. And like
Yep,
that's like, that is I have a privilege in that, even though I am experiencing oppression. And so this is the baseline that we're working with, that we are working against a rigged system, and we are also a people who need to wear clothes. And I know for me, there's something we could probably go off on a big tangent on, of like, exploring femininity and, my personal style as it relates to my identity. And when you are limited in options, that creates scarcity. And if you
absolutely.
are in a relation, like if you're trying to heal your relationship with food and you're like on an intuitive eating journey, food scarcity is real, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's just in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so when what I see happen for a lot of folks is they want to hold on to the clothes in their closet because of the fear that there might not be something accessible to them.
Yes, that comes up all the time. And I always try and remind people that, and actually, you're the expert on this. So, is scarcity mindset? So, for me, it's like that can be a mindset that maybe you were conditioned with or you grew up with or something, but it may not be reality, right?
Correct.
However, like you said, for food and for clothing and for accessibility in some of these places, it's almost like it's not a scarcity mindset, it is scarcity,
Correct.
right? It's not. And so I'm telling my clients, like, of
Yeah.
course, your body feels unsafe when we talk about getting rid of some of these clothes. And I will never make anybody get rid of anything they don't want to get rid of. But it's like, I just want to remind them, like, this is not in your head. This
Yeah.
is a real experience that you've
Yes.
had. And it makes perfect sense that you'd want to hold on to those things. And that's fine. We're just going to store them, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I would say like the difference between like a mental scarcity and like a reality scarcity. So
Mhm.
I had a mental scarcity that I would never find any clothes in my body, in a fat body that I liked or that I felt at home in. And that was not true.
Mhm.
I had to work significantly harder to be able to build out a closet full of clothes that I love. A reality scarcity is, I'll tell you at the time of this recording, I have this hot pink terry cloth sweatshirt that I got from a plus size store. It rhymes with horrid. I want to stop shopping there, but also limited in options.
Right. Yeah.
And the quality is just trash. It's shit. And I haven't had it 6 months and it has holes. So I was like, fuck this. I'm gonna go and see if I can find another sweatshirt from another place, and I cannot find what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas in size 8, do you think you'd have trouble finding a hot pink
Already
sweatshirt?
looked and I could get it if I was an XXL,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I cannot find it in my size.
Right. And that exact situation is something that I acknowledge and I want to make sure that, we all are aware of that. I can sit here and say, find your authentic style, all day long until I'm blue in the face. And there are going to be groups of people for whom you can know what your style is,
Yeah.
but finding the items to implement that and put it on your body, I don't think straight size people in particular understand that, like people say on the internet, like if you see a fat woman dressed like super sharp, just know that she worked like 10 times harder than a straight size person who looks super sharp, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just a different level. They had to work so much harder to find those items where a straight size person could just go into a store and pick them up.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what I think people like when they're still experiencing, grief around clothing or, body grief around clothing or clothing grief, is they want to avoid that exact experience that I just described, that I will have less options. And while I understand that and I hold space for that, and we can sit in that, the reality is what you want is to hold on to privilege.
Mm. Oh, Brie. See, this is why I love you.
What went through your head?
Um, it's just another connection to make. And it actually brings me back to that workshop that you and I did,
Yeah.
where I did some personal work about my own body changing. And it took, your framing and your words to help me understand, because I was in a place where I was like, I fully wholeheartedly believe that everyone in any kind of body is worthy.
Yes.
Everyone here is meant to be here. And yet, so how can I still feel some sort of negativity about my body changing, right? If I
Mm,
believe that for everyone else. And a lot of clients say the same thing. They're like, well, yeah, I can say to someone else, you look amazing, whatever. I just can't do it for myself. Anyway, and what happened in that workshop was that I was able to connect that that's exactly what the pain and grief for me was about losing that privilege. I'm again still straight size. I still have an immense amount of privilege. But basically what I lost, if I'm going to be completely honest, is hotness, right? Like I had grown
yeah.
up feeling and getting attention in a way that was very validating. And
Yeah.
to lose that, again, that's me moving down the ladder. That's me losing that proximity. And yeah, so I just love, yeah, that you're mentioning it in this situation as well.
I think too, like I have one of my journals on my desk from 2015, and I'll often, read from the scriptures of the Book of Bree, and it surprises me how far I've come in just 11 years. And I remember specifically in my journal, one of the things that I said was like, I don't think this is about beauty. I do think this is about sexiness.
Mm-hmm.
And that awareness, like I didn't want to say that quiet part out loud of like, I I am not going to be sexy in the eyes of the culture. And that feels like something that I'm going to miss out on. And what is that going to cost me?
Yeah.
Now, the reality is, I will tell you, okay, I was listening to the wrong crowd because
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem finding people who think I'm sexy. That's not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an issue trying to find somebody who would want to go out on a date with me. But where I do struggle is like trying to find lingerie that fits my body size,
Mm-hmm.
trying to find, so my colleagues and I were talking about, wearing like a dress to a wedding. It's just not accessible in the way that it is to someone else. And we get to grieve that. We get to
Absolutely.
be disappointed that that is our reality, but the acceptance doesn't mean liking it. The
Yeah.
acceptance means I can't change it. And
Yeah.
what can I do within my control?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to add to that a little bit that, you know, the structure of our society is such that any larger you get, you lose in terms of clothing, you lose
Yes.
clothing privilege. I mean, the limitations when I went from a small size to a large size, like I cannot believe you would think that that's not a big deal, and of course it's nothing like going from 3x to the next range, but it happens there. It happens, we particularly, a lot of women are in that, I call it the bubble, where they are large straight size and then almost a plus size, but like there's not really anything in the middle. And so that fear of options, it kicks in every size change.
I think, and that also reflects back to capitalism
Yeah.
because I'm sure you know this statistic, but the average pant size of a woman in the United States, right, is between
Yeah.
this 16, 18.
Yes. And actually it is so funny because so this morning I was prepping, I was listening to a few of your recent podcast episodes, and I swear to you, these notes are from, let's see, Monday. I made these notes. I'm in my notes app right here because I went back. I'm working on a book I mentioned, and so I wanted to have a footnote, that was like, where does that number come from? That 68%. Oh, this was while I was writing the post about Lucy and Yak, right?
Yeah.
And so I followed all the rabbit trails and I found the study, like the
Yes.
study, the 2016 study. And I just want to, do you mind if I read you a
I
couple
would
quotes
love if you
from the
read.
study?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. they're, they're hilarious. Um, so it says the AAW, the average American woman, actually wears between a Mrs. size 16 and 18, which is equivalent to a woman's plus 20, with greater distinctions among racial and ethnic groups. Now, keep in mind, again, this is 10 years ago. And then this is the funny part. In light of this overlap in sizing classification, frequent reports of female customers being frustrated about the general fit and sizing of clothing is understandable. And then there's a citation of another study that apparently found that females are frustrated. Yeah, you think? And so basically, what that study said is that we, as a society, we have the wrong idea about the size of a woman.
Mm.
We have the wrong idea because we are
Wow.
idolizing the 1%, right? That are the thin,
Yep.
kind of born that way. And so in the study sheet, they go on to say, and it was two women who did the study, as a key social consequence, many women compare themselves to the mythical AAW clothing size 14 and evaluate how they differentiate. The authors speculate that women may be relieved in knowing the average clothing size worn is larger than they thought.
Wow. I would love to include the study
Yeah,
again
yeah, I'll send you the
in the
link.
show notes. I
Yeah.
remember like I think I saw the statistic on like raked.com. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I forgot somebody had
Yeah.
posted it and I was like, I need this
Yeah.
data.
Well, it's cited everywhere, and then whenever, again, like I would follow those, and it's usually a link to another article that just quotes anyway. So I just wanted to get to like the absolute bottom of it. And I'll just say one last thing.
Do it.
While the smaller clothing size, style, and figure may be desirable, it is not reality. Thus, it is imperative that our society considers the veracity of the true size of humanity.
Wow.
Right?
Say that last line again.
Yeah, it is imperative that our society considers the veracity of the true size of humanity.
Wow.
These are scientists saying this.
Oh, and so then again, this comes back to the intersection of the patriarchy, of capitalism. Like if they wanted to fix this problem, we could.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
then the wellness industry, aka the weight loss industry, would suffer, and so they don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just, I think you're the person that introduced me to poodle science.
Yes.
So thank you for that, years ago. But yeah, I think that is also a way of conceptualizing this, that we have to consider the veracity of the true size of humanity is,
Mm.
again, we're focusing all our attention on such a small percentage of what the true size
Wow.
is.
Wow. And we're trying to conform
Right.
to be able to fit that unrealistic
Right.
standard. I'll often equate, clothing grief a lot like my height grief, that like it's annoying as fuck that I have to pull out a step stool to reach almost anything at 5'1". But I don't blame myself when I have
Mm-hmm.
to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I used to blame myself for not fitting in clothes.
Yeah.
And so let's get into a little bit of the clothing grief that maybe you see with
Yeah.
clients. I don't know if they're in, perceived larger bodies or actual larger bodies.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I hear from a lot of people is holding onto clothes for but maybe I will fit into this again. How do you navigate that with somebody?
Yeah. Well, I know that you are a great businesswoman and you are always working towards probably honing your ideal client and that kind of thing. And so I'm very, very lucky that over the years, I just attract my ideal clients at this
Yeah.
point. And my ideal client has some awareness of anti-diet and anti-fat,
Love it.
just ideas. And so I do work with women in both perceived larger bodies and actually larger bodies. And what's interesting? It's just as you were asking about that. I think what's the most interesting is the amount of fluctuation that happens. And there's a lot of grief when people have attempted a weight loss and attempted some intentional weight loss, and then they kind of get woke to anti-diet.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I just thinking of a recent client. She had, and I don't remember, it doesn't matter what the reason for the body change, right? What, and specifically, I'm thinking she had gotten smaller for some reason at some point in the year or so before I worked with her. And she had hired a different stylist. They went out and bought a whole new wardrobe. She loved it. And then she came to me when, like it often does, when her body reverted to where it needed to be.
Yeah.
And so for her, obviously, there was a lot of grief about a lot of different things. She pretty much was like, I just want you to buy me the same things that I had. And of course, she was unfortunately then at that bubble.
Yep.
And so I wasn't able to buy all the same things because the same things were not available in her current size.
Mm.
So that's just one example. I think, I also have clients who've dealt with the grief of that scarcity all their lives. Right. And so, there's a difference between those two.
Yeah. And I think that if awareness alone could heal us, I wouldn't have any clients because
Mm-hmm.
I do think that I work with some of the most intelligent, impressive, accomplished, mostly women. And it's like they got these fifth grade wounds these fifth grade wounds of
Mhm.
wanting to fit into the,
Mhm.
pants that they fit into a couple months ago. And there's a couple of ways I think we start to organize the thoughts of when clothes don't fit. But before I get into that, I want to mention similarly in eating disorder recovery, we see a very similar pattern of you deserve to buy or to wear clothes that fit this here and now body. So we go out, buy a whole new wardrobe. 3 months from now, your body is different than the body that you just bought for. And so I don't actually recommend that people go
I
out
don't
and
either.
buy a whole new wardrobe. I say buy a few pieces that you can feel comfortable in that can stretch and grow with you.
Mhm.
And then my personal like rule when I buy clothes is it has to be a hell yes. Because
Mhm.
if it's not a hell yes, I probably won't end up wearing it, or I'll wear it like once or twice and then be
Mhm.
like, I really should wear that thing that I bought because I did buy it. But a lot of times I was keeping things because of scarcity of like, but I don't
Yep.
know if I'm going to be able to find the thing that I want. And so actually
Yeah.
even just with my sweatshirt, gate, I
Right.
bought two sweatshirts this week and they were nice, but they weren't it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
keep these, but the
No.
reality is it's not going to fill the need because it's not what I want.
And it will be wasted money.
Exactly.
It'll be
Exactly.
money sitting in your closet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I have a lot of clothes.
Yeah. Well, just before you move on,
Yeah.
I just want to say, just for people who are listening and in this same position and feeling
Yeah.
that scarcity, and wanting to hold on to those things, I think that that is, again, makes so much sense,
Yeah.
right? And we do need to move some of those things out of your prime real estate.
Yeah.
Okay. For two reasons. One, we don't want them sitting there making you feel bad. Two, if you don't move that stuff out, you can't see what you actually can wear. And you
Yeah.
need to see what you can wear because most people are shocked when they see how little there is in their closets that they could wear today.
Wow.
And so it's really important to have that reality check because then you can give yourself that permission
Yeah.
to say, well, look, I actually really need clothes. I need to clothe my body. And, packaging or, kind of storing those clothes away softens the blow
Yep.
and it allows you time to deal with the grief.
Yep. Yep.
And that, for me, especially time has been one of the best
Mm,
coping mechanisms, for dealing with grief. And
yeah.
so when you put those clothes away, you are you are signaling to yourself that you're still safe. You're not going to, take away a safety blanket,
Yeah.
but you can move it out of your, field of view and top of mind.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I definitely echo all of those sentiments. And I will do that too, of like, I keep a bag in my closet. And if I'm like, I'm not wearing this, like it's here, or, I'm holding on to it for emotional reasons, I just put it in the bag. And then if I go out of my way to go into the bag, then I'm like, all right, maybe I do keep this. Was it you who said that quote I think it was you at the panel we did. I'll include that in the show notes too. It was the summer body, quote
Mhm.
unquote, panel that you wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time.
Yeah, I mean that's just something that's like often said about women's wardrobes, but it's true. I think.
Yeah.
I think that one really finds truth in practice. And
Yeah.
it is. And again, it's because the clothes that you're not wearing, you're holding on to for a future body, a future life, a future family situation. There's lots of things that you buy knowing you won't wear it right
Mhm.
then.
Yep.
And it's for some future that hasn't come to pass yet.
I know how I would answer this for clients, but I want to ask you
Mm,
how you would navigate this for clients.
mhm,
So, yes, right, meeting with folks who have this awareness of like, yeah, 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 I'm all about the body, liberation shit, but
mhm,
also wanting to hold on to clothes, right? One out of that, fear of, but if my body gains weight and I need these clothes again, what do you say for the financial objection? What do you say when people are like,
mm.
I can't afford to buy new clothes? I'm
I
from
say it's
Jersey.
fucking hard. That's what I say. And then I give all my tips for budget shopping. You know,
Ooh,
I mean, it's just, yeah, I totally get that. And so if you want, I can just kind of like lay those out real quick
go for
because
it. Yeah.
that's real tangible stuff. I mean, One thing is that I think people have a perception that they're going to be, like you said, buying a ton of things and spending a ton of money. And that does not have to be the case,
Yeah.
right? So, everyone, if you can get 5 new items at Old Navy for $100,
Yeah.
that can stretch you for a few months, right? If you're in
Yeah.
a transitional period, because that's something that we deal with a lot is when bodies are rapidly changing. So that's one thing, is to adjust how much you think you need. The second one is, you talk about this a lot as well, but there's a lot of noise out there about making perfect decisions and perfectly ethical decisions. And my priority will always be your mental health
Mm,
and you having the clothes that you need so that you can go out into the world.
mm,
Okay. Because for one thing, individuals don't need to take responsibility for these absolute horrible corporate, transgressions against the world,
for sure.
right? And they should be held accountable by a government, which is clearly not this government.
Mm.
But yeah, so my second thing is like, give yourself permission to go to Old Navy, go to Target, do what you have to do, because again, it's more important that you have clothes that fit. The next thing is one of those that has an asterisk, because as always, everything is harder in bigger bodies. But the more you can do secondhand, the easier it's going to be on you financially. And especially in-person thrift stores are really, really hard. That, I've kind of tried to figure out why that is, when we know that there are lots of plus size people, and people have suggested to me, which I think is true, is that plus size women have so many fewer options that they're wearing their clothes out. They're not
Yep.
getting donated, right?
Yep.
However, I've also heard people tell me that, on Poshmark and ThredUp, there is a pretty wide selection. You do Poshmark, yeah?
I do Poshmark. And
Yeah.
once I figured out what my size is at like
Mm-hmm.
Torrid,
Mm-hmm.
I will go on and be like, all right, well, what was somebody selling from Torrid 5 years
Mm-hmm.
ago that maybe I
Mm-hmm.
like more than what
Yeah.
I'm seeing now? Yeah. So I've definitely
Yeah.
done a lot of Poshmark. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think, the other thing that we don't think, is more of, again, a kind of framing shift, but we often spend money on, maybe we have different, values than would be helpful to our own self
Yeah.
care. Right. And so I have seen plenty of people who will buy their kids new clothes every 3 months, right? Because their bodies are changing, but
Yeah.
they're not going to spend money on themselves. And so
Mm.
I would say, take some money from that, take some money from, I don't know, your husband's golf fees, whatever it is, and prioritize yourself for once.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And I think those are really kind, compassionate, and practical things because yeah, it fucking sucks that we might have to buy a whole new wardrobe or we have to buy some items. One of the more, I would say, like, cognitive, behavioral, mental thought processes I would ask somebody to go through is first and foremost, we validate that this is a very tough experience. Can you honestly say that if you had lost weight, you would feel the same shame of needing new clothes?
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, of
And
course
and
not.
and if you don't still have that financial hurdle, then it's not really about the money, it's about the value. And that a
Yep.
smaller body is allowed to have new clothes, a larger body is not. And then I'd ask you, where did you learn that story? How old were you the first time that story felt real for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so many of my clients, I spend the first hour of working with any new client just talking about, I call it their style story. It's similar to what you do with body, which was interesting. Like when I took your workshop, I was like, oh, this is the same thing that I do, but just talking about style. But of course, you can't talk about a style story without it being inextricably linked to a body story, right?
Sure.
And so, yeah, we spend an hour going back and me saying like, yeah, what's the first article of clothing you remember wearing? Who
Mm.
got you your clothes when you were younger? Who was in charge of that? Who had control over that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when did you learn that your body was a problem, and who told you that? And and often it's in a dressing room.
Yes. I mean, I remember being, a young kid and feeling the shame of not fitting in the same size I did the, year before. And what I can look back with objective, awareness is, okay, well, my parents were probably like, oh my God, this is going to cost money. And it was their own financial anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But I interpreted it as a body shame
Mm-hmm.
anxiety of it's because your body changed, as opposed to, oh my God, we got to buy this kid new
Mm-hmm.
clothes. I wanted to say something else too. I have a friend who is pregnant and she's
Mm-hmm.
like, baby clothes are so expensive. And I was like, this is evidence that bigger clothes don't cost more to make. And that's why they charge you more, because if that's the case, baby clothes should be free.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a little old scrap of fabric.
It's just a little scrap of fabric that
Yeah.
probably costs the same as what I'm going to pay for a shirt at this
Mm-hmm.
point.
Yeah.
If anybody's listening to this and they're resonating with what we're saying, there's still some anxiety around, getting dressed in the morning or putting on clothes, changing over seasonal clothes. What is one piece of advice that you would give a client who wants to heal their relationship to body, who wants to, embody their personal style, but is still feeling that emotional separation?
Well, one thing I would say is that I don't think that we're taught often enough that bodies will always be changing.
Mm.
Right. And it even came up for me when you were talking about being in that dressing room and like shocking. You weren't the same size as the year before. Yeah, because you were growing. And, you know, menopause has become a big kind of
Mm.
topic in
Yeah.
the, I don't know, zeitgeist lately. And, I read that going through menopause is as dramatic a change to your body as puberty was. So think about what happened in puberty. I mean, you got breasts, like your hips probably spread, like, just you were completely uncomfortable and had no idea what was going on with your body.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it's like a feature, not a bug, right?
Ooh, I like
Yeah,
that.
that was good, right? Yeah, so it's a feature, not a bug, that our bodies are continually changing. They are doing that to accommodate the different needs in the different phases of our lives, right? Like they are going through puberty and changing to accommodate, the move towards fertility. And then when we are in a potentially fertile place, they're completely changing again. And it doesn't matter if you end up having children or not, your body is going to change in midlife. And it
Yeah.
just continues to happen. In fact, I was thinking the other day about our grandmothers, like just in
Mm.
general, our grandmothers, and how, as young people, we look at our grandmothers and then we see an old photo of them, from 50 years prior. And we just can't even reconcile that's the same person, right? Because of how dramatically they've changed.
Yeah.
And yet, even with all that evidence, we still can't imagine it's going to happen to us.
Mm. Wow. Wow. What a good visual. And I would say, even in that, of like, I don't think I look at my grandmother now and my grandmother back then and think she's not as pretty as she was back then. I love both
Yeah.
versions of her.
Yeah.
And I think for me, one of the things I had to do was figure out, how do I meet myself with that same compassion that I
Yeah.
would for somebody else.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, most women's bodies don't look the same when they're 70 as they did when they were 18. And yet we are conditioned to think that 18-year-old body is always going to be the goal.
Ugh, yeah. Which again, sometimes it helps to think about, you're just thinking your body needs to look and work the way it did when you were 18. It's just prescribing to the patriarchy.
Exactly. Oh,
You know,
100%.
so if you enjoy prescribing to patriarchy, keep it
Yeah.
up.
Yay. And so, how that applies tangibly to clothes is by holding the clothes that you buy kind of lightly.
Mm.
We have another myth we're taught is that we should be able to, at some mythical point in our life, buy a timeless wardrobe, right? And that it will be stylish forever, it'll fit us forever. And
Wow.
that's just an absolute myth, right? That does not happen for 99.9% of women. So if we can let go of that expectation for our bodies and treat our bodies gently when changes happen, just like we would a kid,
Yeah.
then I think that could be helpful going through those phases.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it comes down to that we don't need more control, we need more trust.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I
And
love that.
when you trust yourself and you trust your body, then you are able to make decisions out of autonomy and out of, oh, okay, well, I wonder what my body is communicating to me. And that no matter what size my body gets, it deserves to be fed, clothed, treated with respect, human decency, get
Yeah,
quality medical care. That's the heart of health at every size and body
absolutely.
liberation.
100%. Could not agree more.
If you could leave folks with any like final thoughts on, navigating personal style, no matter what size body they exist in, whether their body is in fluctuation or in change, what would that thing be?
When we're implementing, as we've spoken about, the current world is not necessarily going to have everything that you need.
Yeah.
But I still think it is worthwhile to reflect on what kind of clothes you would love to wear, what you would feel great in, what fabrics are they, what colors are they, what is the style, what does the silhouette look like? And again, it doesn't matter the body size, the silhouette is not about thinness. And I think that is, for me, and in the way that I work with women, it's just another way of practicing listening to your inner voice.
Mm,
And so while the world is not what we want it to be, I think it is very valuable to, create a Pinterest board. Let yourself dream, let yourself be creative, let yourself, see unique items put together in a way that sparks something in you.
mm.
Um, and then, hit me up and then we'll figure out a way to implement it.
I love that. And I'm going to ask you how people can find you, follow you, work with you, all that stuff. I would say, no matter where you are in healing your relationship with your body, and if you are navigating this clothing grief, one, awareness is going to be one of the most helpful tools. And I remember when I was trying to heal my relationship with clothes, I would get what I call the oh shit moment, where I like put on clothes and it's like, oh shit, doesn't fit today,
Mm.
and I'd get filled with anxiety. And what I used to do would be like, I'm just going to ignore it and then not go back to it. I think that not digging into it in the moment is fine. But at some point, we do need to explore if we want to have a different response. And so I remember walking myself through, okay, if my clothes don't fit, how do I want to respond? Like, what would be the most value aligned response that I would tell a client or I would show up for a friend with, or how I would respond to my goddaughter with, and then compared it to how I was responding to myself. And what I needed in that moment was the opportunity to offer myself a corrective experience and reparent myself in the way that the younger version of me needed, of like, yeah, I understand you're upset right now. I just want you to be comfortable. So we don't have to talk about it, but we do need to wear something that is going to feel comfortable right now. And then we can go back to this later. We don't have to do it now. And then to the other thing I would say is, and I'll see if I can find it. I'll link to it in the show notes. But I did a lot of clothing exposures in my early recovery days, because that's a lot of what we were, teaching folks to do. And so it would, an exposure would be like, I'm going to wear a crop top, even though my stomach has never seen the sun. And because I was already body image with Brie, I felt this immense pressure of like, I have to do this and be able to talk about it. And my nervous system would overwhelm me. And I would feel anxiety and just sheer terror. And then I would feel like a fraud because I couldn't do the thing. And now I can look back and say, yeah, my body was talking to me in the only way it knew how. And so, if the exposure of wearing a crop top or something that shows your silhouette or something that shows your apron belly feels triggering right now, please don't do it. I urge you.
I second that so much. Yeah. Yeah. Be safe. Take care of yourself. Let your
Yeah,
body feel safe.
it's not a measure like of your,
Commitment to these ideals or anything. Yep.
Exactly. I feel like I could talk to you all afternoon. Tell
Same.
folks, how can people learn from you? How can they work with you? And can you tell us about your book? I don't know if you're allowed to do
Oh,
that.
yeah, I would love to. So, the best place to kind of find me right now is at my Substack, which is dacygillespie.substack.com. And the newsletter is titled Unflattering. I'm not currently taking one on one clients because I am working on this book, but it should be turned in the next, I don't know, 6 months, let's say. But when I am, you can go to my website, mindfulcloset.com, and get on the wait list to be notified when I'm taking clients again. And I'm on socials at Mindful Closet. Yes, so the book is also titled Unflattering, a radical new way to get dressed.
Mm.
And there are three, oh gosh, no, there's several parts. I'll just quickly talk through them. The first part is really setting the basis for everything that we talked about today, all those connections, making those connections, where does the look that we think is flattering come from, just tracing all of that back. There's a chapter about bodies changing. There's a chapter about intuitive eating and that world, and there's a whole chapter on the ladder of hierarchy. Then we move into like tangibly, how do you define your style, right? And how do we do it without it being based on the size or shape of our body, because that is not a thing I will ever do. Then we talk about editing your closet. So again, practical, all the things that you can, and all the ways you can deal with those, pieces of clothing that we talked about that can have some grief attached.
Yeah.
We talk about shopping. We talk about, the capitalism of it all, and how we're manipulated into buying things. Yeah, and then we kind of pull it all together at the end. So I'm very excited.
I love it. I'm so excited. Congratulations.
Thank
What a
you.
powerful resource this is going to be for folks. And yeah, I will definitely will link all of that in the show notes. I have been like a guest in your blog.
Yes, on
So
the style stories. Yeah, so go
yeah,
check that out.
yeah, we'll include that. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it was, like I said, my pleasure and a joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hey, friend. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Body Grievers Club. Like all of our podcasting friends, we ask that you like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who you think needs to hear it. I know that body grief is tough, but I hope this episode helped you to feel less alone. To learn more about how you can shift your body grief to radical body acceptance, be sure to check out my free 7-step guide designed to help highlight how you can transform your body image story. You can also learn how to work with me inside of the show notes. Remember, my friends, your body grief is painful and real, but you are never alone, especially when you're part of the Body Grievers Club. Thank you for listening, and until next time.